we now take a look at South Africa's big four auditing firms, KPMG, EY, Deloitte and PwC. Now, in recent times, those big four have certainly been stained with accounting scandals and irregular auditing practices. So we are asking the question, what went wrong and how do we right it? Joining me to discuss this is Buhle Hanise, the Deputy President of the African Women Chartered Accountants, and also in the studio with us is Bernard Agulhas, is the CEO of the Independent Regulatory Board for Auditors. That sounds like a big title, so I'm going to begin with you.
I'm so glad.
And ask the question, did you snooze? Did you sleep on the job? Because it's got to be asked, if the people under you are underperforming, surely we have to ask the question, was it because you didn't do your job?
Yes. Well, Godfrey, this crisis that the profession finds itself in certainly had made us sit up and have a review of our current processes, not the IRBA as the regulator only, but also the profession. The audit firms had to take a deep introspective look at what they're doing, how they're doing things, and we had to ask ourselves what did go wrong.
Yeah.
And yes, sometimes we need a crisis like this to support us to see where we can improve things.
To renew.
And certainly from our side, from the RBA in 2018, we developed a full strategy to restore confidence, because what we're doing at the moment is to see how we can restore confidence in the auditing profession.
Yeah.
And the firms from their side is doing exactly the same thing. And somehow we've got to collaborate our efforts, because it is in everybody's interest to restore the confidence in this profession again.
Yeah. But did you work out what went wrong? In other words, was it a question of individuals? Was it a systems problem? Was this an auditing problem in terms of the teachings that are provided to young people as they come into the profession?
Yes. There's a couple of things that we could highlight, but I'll try and maybe focus on three very important aspects that we believe where things could have gone wrong. The first is again, the failures that we are seeing is not only in audit, but it's really in the whole governance process. It's in this whole financial reporting chain.
Yes.
So yes, the auditors come in at the end, and they're responsible to give the confidence to users of the financial statements that the financial statements fairly present.
Yeah.
But somewhere in the process, there are also other role players.
Yeah.
And I think one of the problems is that at the moment we have fragmented regulation and legislation, meaning that it's only the auditors that are regulated.
Yeah.
Only oversight over auditors.
Yeah.
But there's no oversight or regulation of those other players in the financial reporting chain.
Right.
And that is why one of the big solutions for the IRBA, which was proposed by the World Bank in 2013 already, is that there should also be oversight over those other role players in the financial reporting chain, meaning audit committee members, CFOs, etc., financial directors, boards. They should also be regulated. And if we bring them into some kind of oversight, then I think it will even out the playing field.
Yeah. I hear you about the oversight. Buhle, I want to come to you and ask you the same question that I posed to him. But I also want you to answer to another question here, beyond the oversight, beyond having a machine or people that look over other people. There's a larger question we ought to answer here, the issue of ethics.
Yes.
But I want your observations first in terms of what went wrong.
And that's exactly what we have observed, that we need to go back to basics. We need to go back to why this profession was always highly regarded. We were number one all over the world. In South Africa, everybody looked up to South African CAs for solutions, for credibility, for them to make sure that, you know, we can get trust from the public, from financial markets, etc.
Yeah.
So I think what went wrong is basically just greed, honestly. You know, we had a discussion, we had a table discussion, and Bernard was there with our first black female CA, Nonkuleko Kobodo. We had business people, Mr. Bonang Mohale was represented there. And one of the things that was also stated at that function or at that debate was that we need to go back to basics.
Right.
Everybody knew when you become a CA, it comes automatically. Ethics are guaranteed. Integrity is guaranteed. Honesty is guaranteed. Professionalism is guaranteed. And we knew very well that if you have a CA in any space, whether it's in business, it's in private sector, it's in public sector, you were guaranteed those key things, going back to our code of ethics. And we do have it. And in my mind, I don't think we need to renew it or anything like that. What's there needs to be applied. and people must just comply.
Sure.
Yes.
Absolutely. Okay. Do you want to answer the ethics question?
If I could just add to what Buhle is saying, Godfrey, I fully agree that those are the cornerstones of our profession.
Yes.
And when you ask the question, where did we go wrong? One of the areas that I believe that caused this current crisis is not related so much to the technical competencies of auditors. It's related to behavioral competencies. And when I talk about behavioral competencies, I'm talking about ethics, I'm talking about independence.
Yeah.
The fact that auditors are not sufficiently independent of their clients. It comes back to independence.
Now it's a systems thing now.
Exactly. And also not just the independence, the fact that auditors are not sufficiently skeptical when they should be questioning their clients. And this doesn't only apply to the auditors. When I talked about the other role players, it also applies to audit committees. They should also be more questioning of the work of the company management and of the auditors. So it's really behaviors that has also led us into this current
So
situation.
two cozy relationships developing over time, and people sort of are forgetting to do their jobs. So as he said, it's a good time for us to be able to look back and say, so we know now what's went wrong, so we've got to find a way of fixing it. A big crisis, a good crisis, right? You use it to fix. Your ideas in terms of what needs to change, how it ought to be done. I think we've identified the individual, the system. How do we fix it?
I think it's important to continue having the debates that we're having, like for instance today, and the debates that the African Women Chartered Accountants continues to have, where we're saying, how do we restore the legacy and what the profession is well known for, and bring back that thing where I said we need to go back to basics. What is important for me is that it's not going to be overnight. We understand that.
Right.
And the unfortunate part is that as we were thinking we've hit rock bottom, we literally went underground, and you know, we thought we were there, and then other things still came up. So I think it's important to do all the investigations that are necessary, and I think IRBA, for one, is doing a great job. They have taken people into account, because what's also been feedback from the public is that what are these people? Okay, yes, you suspended them at your audit firms, but from a profession point of view, what have we done? And there have been repercussions. So I think we need to continue, and we do support IRBA in all the activities that they do. Remember, we're just a non-profit organization that supports Black female CAs. We're trying to grow the number of CAs. We obviously don't have some authority to implement some of the regulatory requirements, but we are behind them fully.
You can toy as well, it will help. I must point out that we did reach out to KPMG, Deloitte, EY, as well as PwC, and these are the responses that we got. For EY, we're still to get a response, as well as from PwC, but from KPMG, we have been promised an interview, and hopefully we'll be able to get that as well as from Deloitte. So hopefully when we get those responses, we'll try and integrate them within our answers. One of the issues that I hear people talking about is that I think it's already been implemented, the rotation of the auditors for your publicly listed companies. Is that a solution, though? What does it take away from the system that we currently have, where you had continuity in terms of who is auditing your books?
As I mentioned, one of the root causes we found of the current audit crisis and the failures in in the auditing profession has been caused by the cozy relationships. And when you have a long cozy relationship between the auditor, who's supposed to be independent, and the client, then it starts to impact on their decision making, on their whether they're asking sufficient questions to the to the client, and it impacts eventually on their independence. And you can have a high quality audit where all the standards are complied with, but if you have an auditor that is not independent of that client, not only real independence, but also perceived independence. If the public does not see that there's independence, then there can be no confidence and faith in what that auditor signs off on. So when we introduced mandatory audit firm rotation, it was to force auditors or clients to change their auditors every 10 years. Because we looked at relationships between the audit firm or the tenure between the audit firm and the client, and it went on to periods such as in excess of 100 years. And clearly, even if those auditors say they were independent, the perception cannot be that they are independent. At the same time, remember I talked about the whole financial reporting chain. We also have to look at the independence of those other stakeholders. Audit committee members have to be independent of the company, management, and they have to be independent of the auditors as well.
Is
so
it all of them? Is it some of them?
Audit committees?
Yeah.
All of them.
All of them.
They have to be independent.
Okay.
Because if they're not independent, they can't ask the right questions, and they can't hold those accountable to account. They have to hold the executive to account, and they have to hold the auditors to account. So it comes back again to behaviors, and the mandatory audit firm rotation was specifically implemented to address the lack of independence of auditors.
Yeah. Buhle, I want you to come in on this one as well, but I wanted to know from your perspective in terms of empowering whistleblowers, the ability to be able to say, I've seen something that I don't like here, but you know, it's difficult for me to tell my boss, I should have the ability to be able to get it outside. How are you building that up as part of your mechanism for improving the profession?
We believe that at the firms, and we're trying to encourage the firms to have internal whistleblowing, not whistleblowing, but
it's not whistleblowing.
It's whistleblowing, but it's more reporting systems in place internally to report from juniors to the seniors, because we've seen in some of the failures that we're investigating, some of the audit firms find themselves in the crisis because they did not listen to some reports that came from down below. And we encourage the firms to put in place systems where those reports can get to the top level and they can be aware of it and respond to it.
Have you been consulted?
No, not Godfrey. From your question, what I would say, because I sit on a few boards.
Okay.
In the entities that I sit on the boards, I'm mostly sitting also on the audit committee, so I support what Bernard is saying. But from a whistleblowing point of view, it's very critical. It just not leaves the fact that we're talking about the auditing profession, but in general, in any organization, if you don't empower your staff and your employees to be able to express themselves without repercussions, it's going to be tough to be able to pick up some of these issues that eventually impact us from an accounting and from an auditing profession. So I support it fully. It's I think in organizations, whistleblowing should definitely be something that is fully supported. From what Bernard
without
saying,
undermining obviously the structure authority of
and
the
it
organization.
It must be a process that's followed, that the fact that the person is anonymous remains like that, because we don't want that fear that people now are not able to express themselves, having seen wrong things being done in their organizations.
And in terms of your own contribution to the reforms that they are talking about, are you fully consulted?
Yes, we're fully consulted. In other accounting professional organizations like your AWCA, AWCA, and we're collaborating. We've taken a stance as the AWCA that because we are all aligned, we all want this profession to go back to its former glory. We have to collaborate. We sit in meetings, we discuss how do we support IRBA, how do we support SAICA to make sure that we bring back our profession to its former glory.
Can I just add to that, Godfrey? Of course, another big objective of the IRBA and of something like mandatory audit firm rotation is also to provide access to other firms into the audit market. One of the big challenges, and I think another root cause of the current failures that we're seeing, not just in South Africa but globally, is the concentration in the market. There are too few firms. There's not sufficient competition, and then when there's not sufficient competition, quality drops. So when we introduced mandatory audit firm rotation, it wasn't only to ensure that auditors remain independent, but also to provide other firms access into the market. And for that purpose, we are specifically looking at what we call the next tier firms, and especially the indigenous firms, to give them the opportunities. And that's why we have to engage with AWCA and with AWCA, not only from a transformation, a racial transformation perspective, but also a gender. And that's why AWC is so important to us.
And in terms of perhaps involvement of the authorities, do you reckon there might be room for legislation here to play a role in trying to make sure that when people do things that are wrong, they know the law is going to be against them?
Well, the legislation that we're looking for at the moment
I'm just thinking, do we need to strengthen the law? In terms of penalties and stuff.
Yeah. Well, there's two pieces of legislation. Firstly, the IRBA's empowering legislation, the Auditing Profession Act.
Yeah.
That's in Parliament at the moment to give us more powers and to increase sanctions, because we don't want to drive behavior through sanctions, but if that will change behavior that I referred to earlier, then maybe that's necessary. So that is in Parliament. The second piece of legislation that we're looking at, that we hope that will be introduced, is on the comprehensive regulation, to also have legislation that will ensure that those other stakeholders are regulated and that there's oversight over them. So we're hoping that that could also go to Parliament soon.
Absolutely. We won't need to have an interview with you in future, because you'll be doing so job so well, we forget about you.
He already is.
Indeed. Thanks very much indeed for coming through. So I was chatting there to Buhle Hanise, the Deputy President of the African Women Chartered Accountants, as well as Bernard Agulhas. He is with the Independent Regulatory Board for Auditors.